Hey, there you are, fellow story lovers. We are back yet again. EzroniX stories with yours truly, Ezron. This one, I promise, will stay with you. I promise. It will sneak into your hearts quietly and will linger longer after the last word is spoken, of course, by me. Today's story is a slow, burning heartbreak, the kind that speaks in silence, no screams. It's about a father clinging to love with empty hands, about what it means to still show up when the world no longer expects you to. There is a daughter, a birthday, a mother, and a man with nothing left but a memory and a slice of cake. A slice of cake. This story will be like a slice of cake. Okay, pull up a seat, heat and falls. The first light of dawn barely crept through the window, the grimy window of the men's homeless shelter. Yona lay restless on his rickety bed, groaning, turning, lost in the same spinning thoughts that had haunted him now for weeks. This shelter, as broken and as cold as it was, had been his home for nearly 2 years, ever since that short prison stay. But last night had been different. He hadn't slept, not even a wink. For the past 2 weeks, his mind had circled the same thing. Amy, his daughter, her birthday was today, the 5th birthday. But that thought, it hadn't let him rest. Not for days, not for nights. It had clawed at his heart with guilt, longing, and fear. He had missed every other birthday, every milestone, every moment. He had never been there. Today had to be different. It just had to be different. He lay there in the dark, surrounded by the deep snores of the shelter's other souls, the lost, the downtrodden, the weary, the hopeless. The men life had scraped raw. But in Yona's chest, something still burned. A question. What could he do for her? He had no home, he had no money, he had no plan. And yet it was her birthday. And even if he had nothing else, he had to find a way to show up, to be there. Somehow he had to be there because this day was important to his daughter. It hadn't always been like this. No, life had been different at some point. 2.5 years ago, life had seemed very promising. Yona had had a good job, a good one, the kind he could be proud of. He had Leah, bright, full of laughter, kind. And together they had Amy, their daughter, their joy. He had been building something real, a home, a future. There had been clarity. He had thought he had had it, like he had got it and nailed it. And then one morning, he had arrived at the office, just like every other morning, coffee warm in his hand, the mind quietly mapping out the day's activities with joy. But that day shattered everything in a single breath without warning. They told him there had been a staff reshuffle. Unfortunately, they had to let him go. His name was on the list. He was out, just like that. He still remembered that day, the twisted lips of his boss delivering the words, the news, the foul air, the smell of cheap perfume mixed with panic. His legs had gone numb. His heart had thudded in his ears. From that moment, everything had unraveled. Job applications never called back. Rent notices kept stacking higher and higher. Bills kept coming through like everything was okay. Leah, his wife, Amy's mom, strong and steady, had stepped in, picked up extra shift at the small supermarket where she worked, told him not to worry. It's just for a little while, that's what she had said. She had believed it. Yona had believed it. It's just for a short while. But the days, they just blurred into weeks. Weeks dragged into months. And Yona, he had stayed home without a single job offer coming his way. Leah had hoped, truly hoped, that this Yona's joblessness would only be temporary, that her husband, the man she had married, would find his footing again, step in and hold the family together like he had always done. She had taken over the bills, stretched herself within extra shifts, told herself it was just for a moment, for a season, just a small little while. In the meantime, with long hours and extra shifts at work, she had thought, maybe, just maybe, with Yona at home, he will take on the little things, the small things at home, the housework, the chores, caring for Emmy in between his job applications. That he would try, even in the smallest ways, to lighten her burden. But Yona, he hadn't reason to meet her. Never. She would come home every night, her body aching, eyes swollen and sunken, feet swollen. Until she would cook, she would bathe Emmy, tuck her into her bed with bedtime stories, barely whispering between yawns. And Yona, he stayed glued to the TV. 6 months passed that way. She'd walk through the front door every day, shoulders sagging, hands raw from a long day, only to find Emmy playing quietly while Yona sat in the same exact spot every day, same couch, remote in his hand, same silence night after night. And Leah would feel it rise in her throat, the ache, that silent scream, but it never came out as sound. So she cried instead, not loudly, never loudly, but in the places where no one could see, in the shower, in the kitchen, folding laundry with trembling hands. She didn't know how to say it, how to explain it, the fatigue clawing at her bones, the fear wrapped around her future. She didn't know how to explain it, how to put it into words. She had married a partner, someone to support her, not ride along in silence. While she pulled everything alone, she hadn't married a person just slumped in the backseat of their life together, watching her wear down and tear down mile after mile. Eventually she tried to speak, just small nudges at first, but it always ended the same. A tired list of reasons from Yona, how exhausting the job search had been, how drained he felt, how much he needed his evenings to unwind, to catch up, just one more game. As if she didn't deserve any kind of rest at all. One morning, Leah woke up. She was aching all over, she was tired. Her body was no longer hers, just a vessel of weariness. Her head pounded, her limbs were numb, and even blinking felt like work. It was a weekend. She had longed for just a few extra hours in bed. But through the silence came Emmy's cries, sharp, desperate, and unrelenting. Yona stood beside her. He had it too. She waited, praying he'd move just once, that he'd rise, but instead he ground, turned his back and mumbled, "You go and check on the baby." She stared at the ceiling, her throat tight, her chest heavy. There was nothing left to say. She rose, her body screaming with every step, and dragged herself to Emmy's room. Emmy was burning, her body aflame with fever. Her cheeks were flushed red, her breath shallow. Panic surged through Leah's exhaustion. She didn't have the strength to stand, let alone walk, but she had to. She had to. Alone. She wrapped Emmy up, carried her through the rain drizzles outside, waited in the cold line at the nearest clinic, paid with a credit card. She knew it was nearing its limit, the credit card. Held Emmy the whole way back home, her back aching, her mind spiraling. And still when she returned, Yona hadn't moved an inch. He still lay in their bed. It was then that she broke. She could not have it anymore. When she had married, she had said yes to a partner, someone who would walk with her through the storms. Someone who would carry the weight when her knees buckled. But now she was crumbling, and he wasn't there. She had had enough. That is when the arguments began, small and quiet at first in their family. They argued about everything and nothing, bills, dishes, groceries, the silence between them. Amy's care, his lack of effort, her tone, his excuses, her exhaustion, the arguments piled up, feeding off the fatigue and bitterness, until even the air between them felt charged with resentment, until they no longer needed a reason. Just a sound of each other's voice was enough for a storm to just start. Leah started to be demanding, not out of cruelty, but from a desperate place, demanding Yona become the man of the house, demanding for a partner she had once known. She couldn't keep breaking down for a grown-up man, could she? And the more she pressed, the more the air between them cracked. The words they used began to have no mercy. They became heavier, harsher, with no holding back, unforgiving words thrown like stones across the living room. At first, Yona would just step outside, needing air, needing space, telling himself he was just trying to think. But gradually, those walks turned longer, the next stretched farther, and eventually he found himself with old friends in places he had once avoided. He never used to drink, not like this. But the house was too heavy, too tense, too loud, even in the silence. And so slowly, the bottle became his new retreat. Not because he wanted to, but because he didn't know what else to do with the ache clawing in his chest, at his heart. It was the only place left where no one expected him to be anything. In that place, the bar. Then came the day, a harrowing, a day that should never have happened. Leah needed to buy milk just milk for Amy, their baby. Her card was empty, nothing. She checked her bag, no coin, not one. The last of her strength gave way. In that supermarket, at that grocery shop, overwhelmed and frightened by the financial spiral, by the realization that they couldn't even afford the simple basic things, the simplest of the things for just their daughter. That day when she returned home with no milk for Amy, her words cut deeper than they had ever. She branded Yona a failure as both a provider and father. He was nothing, he was no man. Just a failure. And he felt it. He felt betrayed, bruised and broken. How could she? She knew what he was going through. But deep inside, he feared she might be right. This time, she might be right. She might be. He examined himself, re-examined himself again and again. And what he saw wasn't a man. It was a hollow version of the father he had promised he'd be. He saw the circle repeating itself. The father who had left him when he was still young, the one who had never come back home, the man he had sworn never to become. Yet there he was, watching it. He watched it all unfold. A sad moment of his childhood replaying bit by bit. The last weeks leading to this moment, Yona had felt it coming. Hadn't he woken up in the night and looked at Leah sleeping? Hadn't he seen her face drown, hollow, too young for so much pain, and wondered what good he really brought into her life? Hadn't he looked at Amy's tiny shoes by the door and thought, I'm just in the way? Hadn't he already begun convincing himself that living might be the kindest thing he could do to this small family? He had. Yona remembers it all now. That day after Leah called him a failure, he had left the house that afternoon, not to storm off, not to shout, just to breathe. His heart was heavy, his mind was aflame. He told himself he was going for a long walk, just to get some air, just to clear his thoughts. He needed to think, But the sting of her words followed him. They echoed in every footstep he made. And before long, that walk took a turn. Instead of clarity, he sought the company of men who didn't ask questions. He reached for the only thing that could blur the sound in his head, the bottle. When he returned, his judgment was gone, his heart raw, his skin thin with rage and shame. And as soon as the front door clicked open, the shouting started. The argument exploded. Furniture overturned, plates shattered, Amy's cries pierced through the air. Everything was a mess. Leah, terrified, clutching her child, called the police. And that night was the last time Yona saw the inside of the home he had once built with love. The last time he saw Amy. The last time he heard Leah's voice in the same room as he was. From there it was prison for a few weeks. And then the street. He had gone from a man with a family to a man sleeping on the bus stops. And the boat had become his only companion, a daily companion to go to. And sometimes when that wasn't enough, he'd try other things, stronger things, darker things. The spiral had no bottom. It was an empty abyss. And yet through all that, all of it, one thought refused to leave him. Amy. There was no hope left in him. Nothing. He tried to look into his heart. There was nothing. The future, bleak. Every corner of it, bleak. Every glance ahead felt like looking into a dark tunnel with no end. Most nights, Yona felt like the end was approaching, and he wasn't afraid of it. In fact, he welcomed it. He longed for it. That end. He had started contemplating it, ending life as it was by his own hand. He had thought about sleeping pills countless times, had imagined how quiet it might be, how easy. But just when he had made up his mind, something would pull him back. Every time he made up his mind, something pulled him back. Amy. It was always Amy, his daughter. Nights were the worst. That's when the weight came. That's when the silence screamed and the ghost danced. Every fear, every failure, every memory he tried to forget, they came alive in the dark. He never really slept. His body would lie still, but his mind would drift to Amy. He saw her, imagined her growing up, wondering, asking questions. Where did Daddy go? Why didn't he come back? Didn't he love me? And I could feel her little mind turning against him, sensing her hatred, her resentment for a man who walked away, for a man who just gave up. He saw her in his mind's eye, laughing with school friends, raising her hand in class, bouncing around with her favorite toys, and he'd wonder, who are her friends? What's her favorite subject? Does she still like chocolate and whipped cream? What does she eat now? Is she tall? Is she healthy? He asked these questions the way only the broken ask, knowing there would never be answers. Just asking because that's all he had left. And today of all days, she was the only thing on his mind. It was her birthday, her 5th birthday. For 2 weeks, Yona had done everything he could, pacing the streets, pleading in corners, digging through the bins, asking for coins with whatever dignity he could still cling to. He tried selling old clothes to his buddies, to these friends he had at the shelter. But who was buying when everyone around him had nothing? He was desperate. Surely, there had to be something he could do. Something small, some gift he could find. Just to show up, just to be there for her. He still cared. It was her birthday, and even if he had nothing else, he had to try. Clinging to his bonds. He had one goal, one hope. Find something, anything for Amy. Roaming the streets, he wore what little he could call decent. A black hooded jumper, zipped to the neck, with only a thin vest underneath the jumper. The jumper had been once black. Now it was fading, paling around the shoulders. His jeans were stained all over and worn through the knees under the seat. They were black ones, now they were ash gray. His sneakers, if they still could be called that, were white, but only in memory. Now they were muddy, nearly collapsing around his feet. On his head sat a cape. Ironically, it was the newest thing on him, almost pristine. He had found it, as if by fate, lying beside the bin behind the shelter. He wore it like it meant something, the newest thing. Hours slipped by. It was now late afternoon. He had begged at the red lights, leaned into traffic with hands stretched out wide, windows stayed shut, eyes refusing to meet his. He knew the dance, had done it too many times, but today he was more than desperate. Today he had a purpose. He wanted something for Amy. His stomach growled. The only thing he had eaten was a slice of stale bread at 6 a.m. back at the shelter. He had a hangover. He always had one of those these days. Always had a hangover. He no longer walked. He dragged one foot in front of the other, hoping someone would notice the father buried underneath the rags. At a bus stop, he had cried to a stranger, "It's my daughter's birthday, please, anything you can manage. It's my daughter's birthday." They just laughed. They all say that someone had scoffed, well, to a friend. He had had it, let it stop. But he kept moving. He ducked away from the road for a moment, head pounding, body swaying, passing cafes and shops. His eyes scanned for a corner to just sit for a moment. He was tired. It was hot, but something caught him at a window, a cafe window. Behind it was a cake. Not a full one, just a slice. A perfect quarter cut piece of chocolate cake, framed on a small plate. He stopped. He stared, imagining Amy's smile, her eyes lighting up like they used to. It was labeled $5, just $5. If you could get that, just that, it would mean everything. He stood outside the window, longer than he meant to, gawking, dreaming, daring to hope. $5. $5. He whispered it like a prayer, and then he turned back into the street. $5. Dragging his hunger. $5. And his hope behind him. $5. That's all he wanted. $5 for that cake. Then stopped to rest. He couldn't, even though his legs ached, even though the sun beat him down like a punishment. He couldn't stop. $5. He had paced in front of the cafe window back and forth like a man possessed, eyes locked onto that cake, the slice. $5. That's what he needed. That's all he wanted. That's all he had to get. He went back out onto the street at the corners between red lights in front of shops, from one passerby to the next passerby. No one stopped. No one stopped. Except one single lady, old, frail, kind. She gave him a single dollar. One he clutched it like it was hope itself, but it wasn't enough. The day was slipping by, so fast into the evening. It would take him an hour to walk to Leah's house, their house. And he needed to be there. He needed to be there. He had promised himself that he would be there. And still, no cake, no gift for Amy. He grew desperate, then angry. Angry that no one saw him, angry at life, angry that even $5 was too much, too far for him to obtain. And then the thought came. He had fought it all day ever since he saw that cake. He had rejected it. Each time it had whispered, he had refused it. But now it sounded like the only voice speaking sense to him. The only thing that could make sense. He didn't want to go back to prison. He had sworn himself he would never go back to prison. He had sworn. But what other choice did he have? He walked back to the cafe window. He paused, wanted to turn back. But what other choice did he have? He had to see his daughter. He had to get something. In one motion, he slipped inside the cafe. The owner didn't see him enter. He was swift. He was quick. He jumped over the counter, grabbed the cake. Then the owner turned, just in time to see him leaping back, bolting out of the door. She shouted. People gasped. The police was called. Footage was reviewed. There he was, Yona taking the cake, Yona running out of the door, clutching it like it was something very secret. An officer paused the video. I know this one, he said quietly. He's my in-law. Let's go, I know where to find him. The officer was Levi, Leah's brother. He knew what day it was. He knew who the cake was for. He knew. It was for Amy, his niece. He knew. Breathless, heaving, cake in hand, melting between his fingers, the frosting smeared, the shape ruined, his fingerprints crushed into its sides like proof of how hard he had held onto it. Yona stood outside the house he knew too well. His house. Not anymore, not anymore. The place the judge had barred him from ever approaching. The home that once held the laughter, that once held Amy. He could hear the sirens now somewhere close. They were approaching. They were coming for him. He knew it. They were coming. But he didn't care. This was the only place. This was the place where he needed to be. It was Amy's birthday. He staggered closer and closer towards the front of the house. Then he shouted loud, desperate, his voice cracking, Amy! Amy, it's Daddy! I brought you cake, sweetheart. No answer. He looked to the windows. The lights were on. She was there. She had to be there. Amy! Amy, come on, my daughter, come on! Tears streaked down his cheeks, cutting through the grim like rivers running into dust. It's Daddy, I brought you cake. Come pick it up, my daughter, come. His cries broke into sobs, groans, pleas, and then the door cracked. Just a crack. Leah stood there, her face frozen in disbelief, in anger, in something more. Yona kept crying out, still holding on to the cake, begging. Then a voice behind Leah broke. Daddy! Amy burst through the door. Yona dropped the cake. Levi and his partner had just pulled up. The police car slammed to a halt. They saw Yona running towards Amy. Arms wide, her loud out with hope. Amy ran towards Yona, arms stretched, calling out, Daddy, Daddy. Leah was running behind her, shouting for her to come back. Levi grabbed Yona mid-strike, yakking him back, just as Leah reached Amy and swept her up. Yona fell to his knees. Amy kicked and fought to get to him. He reached, he cried, Please, just let me touch her, just once. It's her birthday, just for a minute, just let me hug her, just that. Leah held Amy tight as she sobbed for her father. Levi stood over Yona, his expression torn between duty and something heavier. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly. You know you shouldn't be here. He said it again, you shouldn't be here, like it hurt. Yona didn't respond. His eyes drifted downwards, and there on the grass, broken, jumbled, and smeared, was the cake. His last offering ruined. One of Levi's boots crashed into it. Yona stared at the crumbs and wept. Thank you so much for staying with us all the way to the end. Some stories entertain, others make us feel, and then there are those like this one, and leave a mark, that really leave a mark. that remind us just how far love might go, even when everything else has fallen away. We hope you really felt this one. We hope it moved you. And if it did, don't keep it to yourself, please. Please don't. Like, share, subscribe to EzroniX Stories. Invite a friend, maybe someone who needs a story like this. Let them come and watch the story. Invite them to like and share and subscribe. And if you love to read, please, we've got you. We've got more for you on our EzroniX website. Stories that will stay with you. The link is in the description below. You can also subscribe to EzroniX newsletter. The link is also in the description. Yeah, it is there too. So until next time, stay listening, stay feeling, stay human. Yeah. Salut.